Let's get into it now. A spoiler-free movie review of Good Boy. It is a horror movie from the perspective of a dog. One of the most original ideas of the year. So much so that Good Boy built up a lot of hype just because of that premise. And I think when you have a movie like this where it's so easy to pitch it to somebody, because I was telling everybody who asked me going into this weekend, what are you going to go watch this week? Which is a question I get often because I do this podcast and people just want to know what new is coming out. And I love it when I can pitch somebody a movie that you know from one sentence what it's going to be about. And not only do you know from that one sentence, but you're interested. Even if you don't like horror movies, it has you curious. And I watch a lot of horror movies. And something that always happens at the beginning whenever somebody moves into a new house, because I would say my favorite subgenre inside the horror genre are the haunted house stories. I just love them. I crave them. And in these horror movies, something that always happens is whenever the family moves in or whenever the person moves in, the dog is always the first one to know. They'll either start barking at something and the owner's like, hey, stop barking. There's nothing there. Oh, but the dog knows. The dog always knows. Dogs are smart. They can sense illness inside of people. They can sniff for drugs. They can sniff for bombs. They can do so many things. And this movie takes that idea of the dog being the first one to know and just giving you the dog's perspective as he investigates these things. And this movie is pretty low budget. It was shot by the director, who is the owner of the dog, who in real life is also named Indy. And the crew was pretty minimal. The director and his wife was a producer. So actually inside this film, you see the director acting with his own dog. So those genuine reactions that they have of Indy running up to him, being so excited, them getting along and bonding together, that is because you see a man bonding with his own dog. So all of that is authentic. What they did was they had actors go back in and overdub the voices. So you see the director Ben in the shot, but you hear a different actor's voice. And I will have to say that was a little bit distracting because the acting felt so stiff, and I didn't realize it at the time of watching this that that is what they did. But that stood out to me so much that I had to go investigate. And I have to imagine they did that because of how hard it is to film with a dog, which was what made this movie so hard to make, because he did not want to force his dog to do anything that Indy did not want to do. And that is a big part of this because you as the viewer are so worried about Indy, and him as the filmmaker and also the owner of Indy didn't want to put him into situations that were going to harm him, didn't want to make Indy feel uncomfortable. So at times, they would just wait around for hours until Indy felt comfortable doing something. And the crazy part about this is the dog never felt scared. Indy was never scared. It is through the power of filmmaking and the way this movie is shot, which was really well done, looked very cinematic, was a lot more beautiful looking than I was anticipating because of how low budget this was. And really the reason that it was available at a movie theater down my street was because of how viral the trailer went. But I was so surprised how everything good looked, minus maybe one or two shots with the CGI. But aside from that, anytime Indy was on screen, just staring into your soul, looking up at something that he saw, it looks so beautiful. And Indy is such a good looking dog that I was like, that is a movie star right here. He deserves an Oscar nomination for Best Actor. And it's wild to think that a dog can't act. A dog doesn't even know what a movie is. He has no idea he is starring in one of the most original movies of the year. The director said the only thing that Indy started to pick up on was whenever he got the camera out. He kind of was like, okay, I'm starting to associate things whenever he pulls out the camera, much like a dog would whenever you grab the leash and they know, oh, it's time for a walk. If they hear a rapper, they instantly get up and think, all right, you're about to feed me something. Along those same lines, whenever he started to see the camera, he thought, okay, you guys are about to act a little weird. But everything is implied because you as the viewer know what is going on. You are aware that you're watching a horror movie, and through the lighting and the sound design, you feel scared because you are seeing it from the perspective of Indy, and you know there is something lurking, but Indy has no idea. So the fact that they were able to make him feel comfortable, not put him in any situations where it was, I don't know, animal abuse, I think that's what made this performance feel really authentic because that is what makes this movie novel. Now, when it comes to how scary this movie actually is, I didn't really find it frightening at any moment. It was more so that I was invested in Indy. And obviously, I won't give any spoilers here, but before this movie even came out, and the reason it went so viral is that people want to know what happens to Indy. And I won't say what happens in the ending, but I think that's what made this movie so engaging and entertaining is you feel so much for this dog. And us as humans, that is how we are. We can watch any horror movie and we don't care about people getting their throat slashed, getting crushed and impaled by Michael Myers, or killed in their dreams by Freddy Krueger. But if ever a horror movie messes with a dog, that is kind of where we're out of it. We don't want to see that. So that is what you are feeling while watching this movie. You want nothing bad to happen to Indy, especially because he is so adorable and so lovable and stands by his owner while he's going through all of these crazy things. And I think that is the real message here. And I think this movie is a metaphor for something of how loyal a dog is and how they will be there by your side no matter what. If you are a good owner to them, they are your friend till the end. But there are some things that your pet cannot protect you from. As much as they want to, they can only play a certain role in your life. And I think that is what this movie was trying to say, because the owner is going through something personally. He has some hardships. He has a reason that he went out to this new house. He has a lot of things going on in his life, but the one consistent thing is his dog. And his dog wants to help him as he sees these dark entities ruining his life, making him act out of character. But a dog's love can only go so far until you have to pick yourself up and you have to be the responsible one. And I think that is what this movie was trying to say. Or maybe I was just reading so much into it, because I will say the plot is pretty bare, but the movie is also only about an hour and 11 minutes, so it doesn't overstay its welcome. And I think that is a powerful thing. And I hate to complain about runtimes, but when you have a story like this that isn't a huge story, it doesn't need a whole lot of time to develop these characters, because you can't really develop a character who can't talk or is really aware of the situation. This movie could only be so long. And the fact that it is under an hour and 15 minutes is an incredible feat. So as soon as you're getting invested in the story, it's already starting to wrap itself up. But that being said, not a whole lot of stuff happens. So you almost have to allow yourself to let it be a little bit scary to really get into it. And even watching this in a fully dark theater with the sound blasting, there weren't any moments that really stuck out to me as like, oh, that's creepy, or oh man, I'm really worried here, which I don't really feel that way in horror movies anymore. But I think to even the more casual horror fan, you're not really going to find those moments. So I think that's probably the hardest sell of showing it to somebody, pitching it as a horror movie and saying this movie is going to freak you out. And really, it's probably not. But I love how novel it is. I love that this movie made waves on the mainstream. And I love that through the power of the internet, finally doing something good, that because it went so viral, it was able to go out into more theaters and have more people experience this and get people talking. And I think that is the power of filmmaking. That is why I love the horror genre so much, is because a small movie like this has a chance to compete with some of these gladiators. Was out there competing this weekend with the Taylor Swift album release, with The Rock, with the second week of Leonardo DiCaprio. And here you have this little movie that could, making waves. So I'll admit, about halfway through, I was like, when is this thing going to pick up a little bit more? Because even though it is a short movie, it still takes its time to expand on things. And I just thought it was going to be a little bit more leaning into the paranormal elements. But I got the feeling that they just didn't have the budget for that. But I got to give it up for Indy. I boosted just for his performance. And now the fact that I really want a dog. So for Good Boy, I give it 3 out of 5 pats on the head. Who's a good boy?